Welcome to the Greener Way podcast, a show about people, planet, and purpose, and how investors and corporate leaders push forward in a complex world. Joining us today on the Greener Way is Wide Open Agriculture CEO Jay Albany. Wide Open Agriculture is an ASX-listed company that focuses on a portfolio of regenerative food products and brands that aim to produce nutritious food at accessible prices, as well as nurture the planet back to health. You know, the low-hanging fruit. Jay, welcome to the Greener Way. Can you introduce yourself a little bit more and how you ended up in Perth at Wide Open Agriculture?
Hey, Rachel, thank you for having me. It's really exciting to talk about Wide Open Agriculture and what we're up to and our food brand, Dirty Clean Food. My name is Jay. I'm CEO of Wide Open Agriculture. I'm an American expat who fell in love with Western Australia upon setting foot here. And it's really been my privilege and honor to move my family across the world. I'm a citizen here and to really work and build a business that is dedicated to protecting this land that I fell in love with, protecting the biodiversity and regenerating the soil. Don't worry, I'll keep some beautiful red dirt in the wheat belt.
Look, as a fellow American who also fell in love with the southeastern part, obviously here in Melbourne, I hear your energy and match it. You talk about developing regenerative food and beverage products that are good for people and planet. What does that mean in practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this company, Wide Open Agriculture, founded by Anthony Maslin, Ben Cole, and a sort of legendary regenerative farmer, Stuart McAlpine, about 7 years ago, really with a big vision. It was ahead of its time, I think, to try to create commercial avenues for long-term that support long-term landscape regeneration through regenerative agriculture principles. Mm-hmm. I joined end of 2018. My background, you can hear from my accent. I'm from United States. I've always had a love of farming, and especially the connections you make with local farmers. That the food just tastes better when you know where it comes from, and you can see a non-industrial production system. But I really joined with the background in terms of I've built commercial food businesses before, mm-hmm. and I fell in love with this idea of and that was in grocery in New York, mm-hmm. Kind of a concrete jungle, very opposite of Western Australia. But I really fell in love with this idea of how can we build a business that makes it easy for people to support local farmers who are using regenerative agriculture practices? Mm. I think you asked me what is regenerative agriculture in my view and what that is for us. Mm-hmm. Look, it's an evolving journey, yeah. But there's some core principles that we stick to. And every sort of crop we work with, we have we call them production principles, production protocols. So it's kind of, think of it as a bare minimum. This is anything that it doesn't meet this is excluded. But we also believe it's a journey, and that everyone who works in our network as a supplier meets with a dedicated impact team mm-hmm. and has a pathway to improving what they're doing for the soil and their product quality. Mm-hmm. So those tenets are really about improving the soil quality, improving biodiversity. There are some improving the water cycle on farm. There are some no-nos, which are probably similar to organic, but we don't like to be as formulaic as mm-hmm. Regulated organic produce. So, obviously, no chemical pesticides, chemical fungicides. We're trying to have a clean, healthy product. We want to have a multi-cropping or system involved. Mm-hmm. We want to have a holistic approach where even if it's, ideally there's livestock going through the rest of the crops and you're getting this really nutrient dense output. Mm-hmm. But if it's a grain cropping system, what we're looking for is sort of cover crop rotation, gate pathways that connect, make it easy for biodiversity to thrive. And then I think key now is really the move towards measurement of results. So initially this was a practices-based system, and the proof was in the taste and the pudding, I guess. Mm-hmm. But now we're actually getting some really good data with our partners, sort of showing both the health benefits and environmental impacts, especially in sort of biodiversity and soil carbon.
Okay. So how do you actually measure some of these things, Jay, beyond talking about, happy carrots and cheerful chickens?
Yeah, yeah. Well, happy carrots and cheerful chickens, they are important, especially the
Mm-hmm.
cheerful, especially in the livestock area.
Mm-hmm.
And I will answer your question. I just want to really underscore something.
Sure.
When I grew up, I'm about 46 now. Jeez, that's
Okay.
embarrassing. But
Look,
when I
you're
grew,
in good company. Me too, Jay. We'll take a deep breath and move through this moment together.
it's tough. It's tough. But yeah, when I grew up, there were these exposés on the chicken industry that were really eye opening, and I think the corporate villain of my childhood was Kentucky Fried Chicken and probably some of the large grocery store chicken companies that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really going to call out, but the gist of it was they are genetically no longer chickens because they've been engineered to produce large breast meat and they can't even
Mm-hmm.
walk around. And I think, that's an extreme example. And then, of course, there was the sort of animal slave like conditions, exposed as well. That's an extreme example, but it's not actually that different now for a lot of the stuff you get in Coles and Woolworths.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't checked out I haven't seen firsthand the Australian genetically modified chicken, so I won't make that claim. But what I can say is those conditions are not something that you really want to be a part of and support. It's really been a system based on yield and profit at
Mm-hmm.
scale, not on healthy, nutritious, animals. And I think in beef, it's particular gets a bad rap because of the obvious link with a grain-fed cattle system and methane. So I think what we're trying to do is really have systems where we can show that the emissions from sort of what we would call livestock raised the right way
Mm-hmm.
is significantly different. The quality of life, the impact on the environment is significantly different, and you're actually managing livestock in a grazing pattern that is frequent rotational grazing to sort of replicate the way it's always been,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of spread the goodness of animals moving around the land. In terms of things that we're measuring, which I think was your question,
Yeah.
we've had really exciting developments. We're not science leaders. We are people who are trying to create a platform that supports regenerative agriculture. But we've the number of partners who can provide data has really increased,
Mm-hmm.
and some of it's a little bit complicated. But there's one that I think one advancement that I think is really exciting, which is a satellite based data to show carbon levels in the soil over a series of 5 years and linking that and sharing that information with the farmers so they can link it to their practices on farm.
Oh,
It gives
wow.
evidence, obviously, which is great, and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully we'll reach a place as an industry where that can be part of carbon credit system, a
Mm-hmm.
financial product, which we're all skeptical about, but so be it. It's what the banks have deemed is measurable and tradable.
Mm-hmm.
Got to start somewhere, but it's pretty exciting because it helps give them data about what did I do there, what did I plant there, how did I change what I'm doing, is it actually working? So that's really exciting.
It would also, I would imagine data like that would provide information on things like sort of micro targeting where fertilizer needs to be placed as well. If you have a pocket of high carbon soil versus a carbon of low carbon soil, that might impact sort of more targeted spend on fertilizer.
Yeah, it helps them reduce the inputs. It helps them manage their farm plan, and I think what's really changed in the last few years since we started this business versus now is that it used to be a very expensive manual process to measure
Mm-hmm.
changes in soil carbon. It used to be someone, whether it's the farmer or us or someone that we both pay, has to
Mm-hmm.
go out and like manually put these tests in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really a big change. There's a couple of companies doing that in the startup scene, which is really I want to say disrupted this sort of like lock on this information in a way that makes it's still costly, but it makes it achievable, which is really breakthrough.
Oh, I was going to say, Jay, I feel like we could geek out on individual metrics all day in
We
agriculture.
can.
But let's let's talk about sort of the bigger point that you're referring to here, which is that agriculture is one of those sectors that is both heavily impacted by climate change and also a major source of greenhouse gas emissions. And so how are you positioning wide open agriculture to reduce those risks, as well as take care of some of those, take advantage of some of those opportunities that may come from that?
Yeah, look, that's a great question, and I'm gonna answer your question in a two-part answer.
Perfect.
Number one is the time. It's similar to what I mentioned about using the GPS data that has always been there but wasn't accessible until software advancements.
Mm-hmm.
What's really changed now is the consumer. I really feel like the consumer, and I don't know if I don't want to give. A lot of people say, "Oh, COVID changed everything," and I don't know if I want to give too much credit to COVID and Netflix regenerative agriculture documentaries. But the reality is, people had a lot of time to research things and think about their food over the last 3 years, and the demographics have changed globally, and I think people have a better understanding, easier access to information about how their food is made, its food miles, what goes into processing, what happens, and consumers put a higher value on the environmental cost of food, which is amazing. It's still a much smaller group of consumers than I would like. I would like it to be everyone, but there's definitely been a change. So when I was in New York and running my online grocery, I had a little eco-friendly message. We were like the first. We delivered on bicycles in Manhattan, and we were the first people to use reusable bags and this and the. I had an online farmers market. That was all sort of for a small niche group of customers who cared about it. I think what's different now is that it's just enough information to really make a decision if you are so inclined, and the number of people who are aware of this is increasing. It's still hard, and I think that's why I'm sure on your podcast and in your community of friends, there's a lot of complaining about greenwashing, and that makes sense because as people are getting more aware of this, big companies have adjusted their packaging, adjusted the colors on their packaging, use words like sustainable or natural. I mean, what does that mean? But I think in terms of the other question you asked was, how big of a problem is this? And how are you going to make a difference? And I would say that it's really interesting. Like, it's like trendy cool if you're sort of a privileged left-leaning person to have a Tesla and feel good about yourself. And those are expensive. But actually, our modern food, I like to call it the food industrial complex, is just as bad as the fossil fuel industry or the transportation industry in terms of its impact to the planet. A third of global emissions come from the modern food industrial complex. But kind of more alarmingly, 3/4 of biodiversity loss is the result of this system as well. So it's really, these are really big numbers. And I think that it's exciting to have a company that is sort of working to make that more visible and to make it, our mission is to make it easy for people to make a change. I will also say the other stat that I left out of there was 100% of terrible food comes from the food industrial complex, except for Tim Tams and Biscoff. I really love those two, no matter what they're made of.
Look, we're not here for food shaming, Jay. That's I'm certainly not. My heart is big and ecumenical when it comes to delicious, tasty product. So, but having said that, then, how specifically do you think that companies like Wide Open Agriculture can impact on, first, working with farmers and suppliers to reduce things like biodiversity impacts and impacts from climate change, but then also this other side of the coin, the circular economy aspect as well?
Yeah, food waste is a huge thing, and it's really difficult as a food company, especially to participate in the biggest channels where people buy food, grocery and food service, restaurants. And it's understandable. The health requirements are totally, healthy packaging that extends shelf life or reduces microbiological activity is obviously important for people being healthy and safe. What we've really focused on is how can we reduce our plastic? How can we reuse? It's the 3 R's. Reduce, reuse, recycle. It's I know we've learned that since we were toddlers, but like sometimes things are basic, and and really making a priority for that. So what I'm really proud of for our company is that, fresh meat sold in grocery stores, and I hate to keep talking about meat because we that's just one part of a lot of regenerative produce. But here I am again, fresh meat that we sell in our grocery packs. It's really difficult to have an eco-friendly package for that. In our online business, we can use compostable bags, and we can experiment with other sort of, we reuse about 3/4 of our boxes are reused in the online delivery, which is awesome. We use crates instead of boxes when we deliver to third parties, so we can reuse those. But in the pack, it's really difficult. It's plastic, and it's plastic for the grocery store. Demands certain shelf life. The health department interaction with the grocery store demands, checks, which is totally understandable. And it was really difficult for us to solve that problem. First couple of years, there was kind of nothing we could do. We had to outsource our retail packing to a processor outside of Bunbury. Over last year, we invested in an in-house processing facility, and so we actually bought this, I think the first one in WA, this machine that reduces plastic required by about 80%. So, and then it has the tray at the bottom is recyclables. It used to be plastic trays. So it's not perfect, but it's significantly better than what we're doing, what has been done. And, I think it's one of these things where it's a journey. And obviously, when we're not going through the grocery store channel, we have a lot more flexibility in what we can do.
Sure.
But even compostable packaging, it's hard sometimes because there's a difference between home compost, which is the natural thing people want to use, versus sort of industrial compost is technically compostable, but it's still in your backyard compost 6 months later. And then the other thing is bones and things where you have health risks, and you have waste that happens from the bags breaking. So it's something that is a really big issue, and that I think everyone is working on to get better. We are too. I will just plug us for a second. I know I've been monologuing a little bit, but we just released our what we call it an annual regeneration report. It's kind of the comparable thing, I guess, would be an annual sustainability report at another company, which sort of shows some of the things we've done and gives lots of those environmental geeky answers. It's a robust 40-page report with graphs and pictures, and it definitely addresses that challenge that you said in particular.
We will be sure to drop a link to that report in our show notes, Jay, so we don't have to go through all 40 pages now, but I would love to make sure our listeners are informed. As we come to the end of our time together, Jay, what gives you hope about Australian agriculture in the future?
Oh, I think that this country is really motivated. So the consumer base of it is in a way that, I can even tell a difference between now and when I joined this company in 2018. The awareness and the interest. When we first started Dirty Clean Food, which is our food brand, dirtycleanfood.com.au. When we first
we love a pluggable at the Greener Way.
When I first started, I was driving around with a farmer in his ute, and we were kind of going around, and I'm trying to figure out how to sell it to chefs and grocery stores. And I led with environmental. Because I thought that was the most powerful message for myself. And regenerative, just blank stares. And I just shift my pitch to, this is my friend Warren. He is a cattle farmer. His beef is amazing, and there's not methane coming out of it. Was a sub point communicated later.
Yeah.
But it was, this tastes good. It's a nice guy. He's in Boyd Brook. Try it out. And I think now when we have these conversations, even some large companies distributing the product in other parts of the country or other regions, they're asking good questions about regenerative agriculture and how do we measure it and what do we do and how can they learn from what we've been sort of trying and failing for and then succeeding for many years now. So I think the overall interest and information is much, much better, and it really gives you hope because Australia is not the largest country population-wise, but it has a lot of land, has a big impact, and if it can be done here, it really can be done in other regions. Europe and North America can also be done. And I think Australia has amazing things that come out of its ground. And we are involved in the agricultural side of that. But to show it can work here and show consumers will pay extra and fair prices for environmentally positive foods, this is an area where we're ahead of the rest of the world. So it's pretty exciting.
Excellent. Well, we'll leave it on that. Jay Albany, CEO of Wide Open Agriculture, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Greener Way podcast. If you liked today's show, remember to rate and review us on your podcast platform and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Any feedback? Contact us on podcast@fssustainability.com.au. I'm Rachel Allen Backus.
The Greener Way podcast is a product of FS Sustainability, a show about people, the planet, and investing in our collective future. All information in this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes only. The Greener Way podcast gives listeners access to information and educational content provided by discussing numerous financial sustainable options and our featured guests. It is not intended as a substitute for professional, legal, or tax advice. The hosts of The Greener Way are not financial professionals and are not aware of your personal financial circumstances. FS Sustainability operates under an Australian Financial Service License and the exemption made available under the Corporations Act 2001 in respect to any information or advice given. Before making any financial decisions, you should read the product disclosure statement and, if necessary, consult a licensed financial professional. For more information, head to the disclaimer page on the FS Sustainability website, fssustainability.com.au.